Welcome to the Inquirer 1.0. Today we have the video you've all been asking for. Melvin, the disappearance, his association with Stuart Boyd, and the tie-in with Big John Simmy Simpson, and how all three ended up in tragic circumstances. It's Gangland Glasgow once again. Okay, guys, if you can smash the likes out there, I'll get started, and we'll get stuck into this. And please leave me your comments and your memories. And I know I've got a lot of Scottish subs who were around Paisley, were around Glasgow, who knew of a lot of these characters. So I really enjoy reading your comments. You give me an even better insight. With that being said, let's get on with it. Three infamous gangland figures in Glasgow, once good friends, who all met tragic ends. One murdered, one in a car crash, and the other missing, but believed to have been murdered. The three names, Charles Melvin, Big John Simmy Simpson, and Stuart Boyd, referred to as Specky Boyd in the press. The complex relationship between Charles Melvin, Big John Simpson, and Stuart Boyd began as their paths crossed in life and were founded on genuine care for each other, but morphed into something much uglier, perhaps due to paranoia and excessive drug taking. Two factors that go hand in hand amongst the underbelly of Glasgow. Charles Melvin was a lad who grew up hard way, in and out of reform schools for petty crimes, before entering the big leagues of Barlinnie and Peterhead jails, where he formed strong links with serious players in the underworld. One of his distinguishing features that Char hated was a nasty scar on his face, courtesy of the vicious Welsh brothers, the same clan that Paul Ferris had such trouble with as a young man. He also had several run-ins with the notorious James Jember McLean, one of which left him stabbed several times in prison and led to a confrontation outside of prison, where Char pulled a shooter on McLean, who dared him to shoot it before the pair went their separate ways, with no shots fired. Jember McLean talked about this encounter in an interview he did before his death. He said, "I was standing at the urinal when I felt something at my head, and I turned round and it was Chaz with a gun. He said he was going to blow my head off. I told him he better fucking shoot me, because if he didn't, I'd murder him. He put the gun away and I told him, I'm going to murder you. You don't pull a gun out unless you're going to use it. Not long after that, I heard he had been shot by someone." Charles Melvin went on to build himself from a popular small-town gang member and street dealer to a big player with a serious drugs round due to a deal he struck with the infamous Stuart Boyd. Stuart Boyd, a notorious figure in the Glasgow underworld, had a stranglehold on his territories in Glasgow through a mixture of fear and respect, and had a powerful crew of villains who worked for him. Melvin had gone to the Royal Oak in Nitz Hill, Boyd's headquarters, and asked to sell Brown from the pub for him. Boyd agreed, but Melvin had competition in the form of another ambitious criminal, Peter Ped Henderson, who wanted the same opportunity. The fired-up opponent ambushed Charles Melvin outside the Royal Oak, desperate to secure the lucrative spot for himself, and stabbed Melvin in a frenzied attack. The ever-ready Charles Melvin fought back, and his attacker was found later slumped in the street with a stab wound, oozing blood. He died of his wounds, and Charles Melvin was arrested and put on remand. He beat the case when detectives who had viewed the event had no choice but to testify Melvin had struck out in self-defense. The incident boosted Melvin's reputation, and he quickly became an integral member of the feared Boyd's squad of dangerous villains. Melvin continued to grow his lucrative drugs round, and also had a number of violent incidents along the way, as is the norm in the world he lived. William Aldy Old was a dealer who purchased a package of speed from a villain by the name of Rab Park. Unknowingly to Charles Melvin, Aldy passed it to him to sell, with Melvin not knowing that Aldy's intention was to bump Rab Park. When Park did not receive his money, he blamed Melvin and put threats out that he was going to deal with him in a violent manner. Melvin, not one to shy away from confrontation, went to Park's house, firing shots through his letterbox, then attacked Aldy, stabbing him in a fight in the Plaza Ballroom. Other violent incidents, including the slashing of John Friel's enforcer Spot Hendry and the killing of Brian Dopey Cochrane in the midst of the Paisley gang wars over control of the Tamazapan market, soon followed. The Cochrane family worked for Grant McIntosh, who was at war with Stuart Boyd and the FCB guys Gillespie, Robert Piggy Pickett, George Goofy Doherty, and other associates. Robert Piggy Pickett had allegedly tried to kill Dopey and his brother Rab by shooting at them and had stabbed Hughie Cochrane in the face, but Brian Cochrane had not been permanently dealt with. Boyd allegedly sent Moose Egan and Char Melvin to deal with Brian Cochrane's Cochrane. I hope I'm getting that right, guys. Just tell me in the comments if I'm mispronouncing it. Setting him up on a bogus drug deal before shooting him. On being found badly injured, he laid the blame squarely with Moose, not Char Melvin. Melvin was eventually arrested after being on the run, and whilst on remand, his brother gave a statement to the police, blaming Melvin for the murder when they found drugs at his mother's house on a search. The police used the fine, threatening to charge his mother if he didn't serve up his brother Melvin. In the end, Boyd helped sort the situation out, and the statement was retracted, and both Moose Egan and Char Melvin got not proven verdicts. This act of loyalty to Stuart Boyd, taking on the hit and keeping Storm, would cement him as one of the tight circle Boyd had around him. John Simmy Simpson was one of the most complex and terrifying characters to ever stalk the streets of Glasgow. As a young lad spending much of his early life in care, he crafted a fearsome reputation as a child who, despite his young teenage years, was already a hulking lump and was vicious with it. Without prejudice, he attacked and robbed dealers of all ages on the streets of Pollock and surrounding areas, so much so that the older criminals got together paying for hitmen to take the young man out. None was successful. He defeated and hunted down any men that didn't bend to his will. Simmy Simpson was actually Stuart Boyd's nephew, and he, perhaps out of family loyalty, took the volatile young man under his wing, much to the chagrin of other members of the firm, who were wary of the unpredictable man mountain Simmy. Specky Boyd at the time John came into the firm was going through numerous problems of his own. His friends, the Gillespies, Robert Piggy Pickett and Goofy Doherty, had been arrested on a murder charge, and it looked like he was going to get pulled in as well. It was also in the midst of a war over the lucrative jellies market, and that could have been another reason he wanted his nephew on the team. Charles Melvin and his wife Margaret were also friends with Simpson, and he looked up to Margaret like a mother, and it said she was the only one who would tell him off and he would accept and be subservient to. Two things Charles Melvin and John Simpson had in common, apart from their gift for violence, was their insatiable appetite for drugs. Quite simply put, they got high on their own supply in copious amounts. This was not a behaviour which is sustainable and was bound to bring problems in their hectic lives. The fallout between the three men allegedly happened whilst John Simpson was serving a prison sentence. He had left 20,000 plus to be looked after by his good friend's family whilst biding his time in jail. Unfortunately, the couple had spent at least a third of it, and as his release came nearer, they were terrified of the consequences if they didn't pay up the money to John on his release. Boyd allegedly had sympathy for their cause and went to visit Big John in prison and asked to borrow the same amount as they had spent, claiming it was a temporary loan. Simpson readily agreed as he looked up to Boyd, and at that point was keen to show his loyalty. Boyd had relocated to Spain to evade the police who wanted him in court for the murder charge his co-accused had been sentenced for, and was hopping back and forth, careful to keep under the radar of the authorities. It was said that whilst away in Spain, Big Simmy had begun a relationship with one of Boyd's women, one Karen Paris. She had become the apple of Simpson's eye. This is given as a reason to as why possibly he had Simpson killed, but that for me is speculation and not credible. Good sources say that Boyd was not bothered about that. She was a working girl. If she kept his nephew happy, it was fine by him. What is more credible, that on Boyd's return to Glasgow to face the charges which he eventually beat in court, Simpson began getting infuriated with Boyd, as he had allegedly been avoiding Simpson due to his excessive drug taking and recklessness, and he took this as a slight. He was also unhappy that Boyd had not repaid the loan of the money. John Simpson allegedly kidnapped a couple who were friends of Boyd and worked for him as dealers. He tied them up and threatened to physically abuse the woman if they didn't cough up their stash house. This reckless action put him in bad favour with Boyd and his crew, and worsened relations to a dangerous point. Charles Melvin and Margaret at this point still good friends with Simpson and Boyd, and tried to stay out of the growing family feud. However, one night, Charles Melvin, out of his head on drugs, got wrapped up in a devious scheme by Simpson to take Boyd out in punishment for the non-repayment of the loan and the slights from Boyd ignoring him. Melvin, out of his head, not knowing what he was doing, got chilled up with Simpson and staggered after him on the way to Boyd's flat. Simpson fired shots through Boyd's letterbox and called out his uncle, who watched all the events unfold on his security system. Charles Melvin was slumped in the flat well out of his head as Simpson raged, banging the door. Boyd called a team to come and take both men out as he left the flat, but luckily for Simpson and Melvin, they just missed the two men. This was an utterly reckless and stupid move, fueled by Simpson's paranoia, jealousy, and bitterness towards Boyd. To bring a friend into it who was out of his nut was also a sly move, as he knew would put Melvin in Boyd's crosshairs, as well as force him into allying with Simpson. Boyd flopped on Melvin the next day as he awoke from his drug-induced hangover to the realisation that he had fucked up in a major way. Boyd wanted answers, and luckily for Melvin, Stuart Boyd had seen the state of him and had sussed the liability was on his nephew Simpson. He warned Charles Melvin to keep away from Simpson and told him to clean himself up before leaving to formulate a plan to deal with the out-of-control Simpson. Big John Simpson was not worried about the situation. He felt he was in the right and feared no man on earth, even his all-powerful Uncle Boyd. He decided to put the ante up. He was pissed off about the money he was owed and began turning up at pubs controlled by Boyd's gang, threatening his men and demanding Stuart Boyd meet him. Shortly after this, Simpson was resting at his auntie's worse than wear after a binge of jellies when three masked men burst in, held his auntie at gunpoint downstairs, whilst the other two sprang into the bedroom, aiming their sights on the hulking Simpson. Simpson later said he pounced up at the two men as they fired, hitting him in the head, and they panicked and fled. His fearsome reputation clearly spooked the shooters and perhaps saved his life. The attackers were sure Simpson could not have survived the attack, but the resilient Simpson did manage to pull through from his horrendous injuries, much to the upset of his enemies. This time was a tense one for all close to Big John Simpson, as surviving a deadly hit further enhanced his reputation to mythical proportions, and people knew that he would be looking for revenge on leaving hospital. Simpson had a clear idea he was in the sights for the hit, and on leaving hospital he began formulating plans to exact a brutal revenge on those he had in the frame. It would be plausible to say that Stuart Boyd would have been one of those he felt was most likely behind the assassination attempt. Unfortunately for Big John Simpson, his quest for revenge would not come to fruition. A three-man hit team struck just after 3 p.m. as the 24-year-old Simpson stood with another man in Lingarth Road, Pollock, Glasgow, waiting for a lift. A white car drew up and he was shot 4 times in the chest at point-blank range. Simpson seemed to know who the people were and didn't consider them a threat. This was a huge mistake, which most definitely posed a deadly threat to him. Big Simmy was taken to hospital, but this time he could not recover from the deadly wounds. Charles, Melvin and Margaret were devastated by Simmy's death, and Melvin, who was bad on the drugs by that point, had been given somewhat of a wide berth by Stuart Boyd due to his friendship with Simmy. Ricky the rapist Taylor was a disgusting predator, part of the Boyd team. Stuart Boyd accepted him for reasons only he could know, but this person was hated by many in Boyd's inner circle, including Charles Melvin. One higher-level former criminal in Glasgow told me that Boyd kept him because he was good for the dirty jobs other straight criminals wouldn't do. The facts are that this man had raped at least 4 women and was a deviant monster. He was also very sly and was in Boyd's ear telling Boyd that Melvin needs to go due to his unhappiness about the Simmy murder, and that he was a loose end. We cannot know the truth about what happened next, but it's common knowledge to Melvin's family that he went in good faith to meet someone he knew well, and was last seen getting in a car with Ricky Taylor. Charles Melvin was never to be seen again, and despite Margaret, Melvin's wife, and his brother attacking Taylor and pressurising Boyd, they never got an answer to what happened to their beloved Charles Melvin. It remains a dark secret to this day, and we can only hope that someone has the heart to give his family closure on what actually happened. As for Stuart Boyd, he had got involved with the Russian mafia in Spain and was living the good life until a tragic car accident ended his and 5 other innocent people's lives. The car crashed through a central barrier and hit another vehicle at Mijas near Malaga. His companions, Nicola Gavin and Louise Ann Douglas, both 21, were killed, with 3-year-old Helen Williams. 2 Spaniards, including a 13-year-old boy, were also killed in the accident. Truly horrific end for all 3 men involved in this criminal saga. John Simpson's murder remains unsolved, and Andrew Dolan walked free from court on unproven charges for the murder. It's widely believed that Boyd was behind both hits on his former friends Charles Melvin and John Simpson, among others, but this is not proven, so it can only be classed as a rumour. Whatever the case, our thoughts and hearts go out to all those who have lost loved ones and lives within this war and any other gangland war that happens. It always ends in tragedy. 99.9% of the time it does. And just shows that 3 good friends and family members even have ended up falling out, and it's all ended in terrible tragedy. And I've heard a lot spoken about Stuart Boyd from people who knew him, and even old prison officers who said he was a proper stand-up man, respected. You know, I didn't know him, so I can't say either way. And the same for Charles Melvin. Lots of love out there for him, and also for Simpson as well, for people who knew him. So, and all their victims as well. Just a terrible circumstance. But I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Let me know in the comments if there's anyone else you'd like me to cover.